Please be seated. It was a wonderful turnout. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I have permission from the bishop to tell you that if you come each night, for each night you come, you get 100 years off purgatory. And if you hate it and keep coming, you get 1,000 years off for each. I hope you won't hate it. I begin this evening with a pretty famous passage from the Gospel of St. Luke. Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what it is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation upon rock. And when a flood arose, the stream broke against that house and could not shake it because it had been well built. But he who hears and does not do them is like a man who built his house on the ground without a foundation, against which the stream broke, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So many of you, some of you anyway, may be familiar with a great Catholic writer of the last century. His name was Frank Sheed. Interesting because it sounds like Sheen, Bishop Sheen, Fulton Sheen, Frank Sheed, two FSs, and they both wrote a lot of great books. Both are very favorites of mine, but Frank Sheed had a great gift for writing clearly and simply. Some people call him the Catholic C.S. Lewis, and if you're familiar with him, that was one of his gifts, clarity of prose, very, very good writer. So anyway, Frank Sheed wrote a wonderful little book, lots and lots of wonderful books, but one of his shortest books was a little book called A Map of Life. A Map of Life. It's still in print, as are most of his books. And he begins that book, grabbed my attention almost from the first word. He begins by saying, if you're going to use something properly, you have to know what it's made for. If you don't know what it's made for, you're very likely going to misuse it. And he uses the example. He says, supposing you had a razor blade and you used it to saw wood or to cut a log or something like that. You wouldn't cut much wood and you'd ruin the razor. I don't think anybody disagree with that. Then he makes a transition and he says, what are we made for? If we don't know what we're made for, there's a very good chance we will misuse or abuse ourselves. So what are we made for? And then he proceeds in the rest of the book to draw out what we're made for and all the implications of that. A lot of you are old enough to remember the old catechism answer to that question. Started out questions and answers. Who made you? God made you. Why did God make you? To know, love, and serve him in this life, and to be happy with him forever in the next. Which didn't mean he doesn't want us to be happy now. In fact, the implication is that whatever happiness we can have in an imperfect world comes of knowing and loving and serving God, which also entails serving other people. That's going to be the source of our happiness here and ultimately our source of happiness in the hereafter. Makes perfect sense. That's why St. Augustine said, centuries before Frank Sheed and Bishop Sheen came along, our hearts are made for God. We are made for God. And our hearts will not rest until they rest in God, in him. In fact, this is really the glory of being a human being. That we're not like the other creatures in the world. We're made for God. We're made for the glory of serving God and serving each other, his children. I'm going to be relying for the rest of my talk this evening on a wonderful Jesuit priest that some of you may know, Father Robert Spitzer. He's a terrific guy, a wonderful man, and a really impressive fellow, a saintly guy, I think, because he's done so much good work for the church. You may have seen him on EWTN. And he's produced a wonderful website called Magis Center. You know the story of the three wise men, the Magi? They were wise men, Magi, the wise men, Magis Center, Wisdom Center. And that's a great site to go to. It's a great site especially for young people who are questioning whether they believe in God and wondering if there's a contradiction between all the things that science tell us and our belief in God. He addresses all of this, and he addresses it in a way that most people can understand. And he's a brilliant guy. He knows what he's talking about. At the end of this mission, I'm going to give you all a handout with a list of all the references I've made. So if you're interested in doing anything, going to any of these sites or reading any of these books or anything I've mentioned, most of it will be on this sheet of paper, and you can take that home, you can make copies of it, you can pass it out. So, Father Robert Spitzer, one of the themes that he comes back to, and this is the tie-in with what I just said about Frank Sheed and what are we made for and what is the source of our happiness, our ultimate happiness. Father Spitzer talks a lot about happiness. And in more than one book, and on that wonderful website, magiscenter.com, he doesn't just talk about it. He comes up with a picture to help us understand what he's talking about. You remember that when I was speaking to you on Sunday, those of you who heard me speak, I said that on the first night I was going to give you a picture to help you remember the points that I was trying to make. Well, I'm stealing it from everything I give you, I'm stealing from someone else. No original thoughts. And the picture, not only the words, but the picture comes from Father Robert Spitzer's work. And he repeats it over and over and over again. And I remember when he first came out with it, and I keep up with how it develops over time, but essentially it's remained exactly the same. It's very coherent, cogent, and I think compelling. And it's a great picture to keep in mind when we're looking at our lives and saying, where do I fit into this picture? What are my priorities? Am I living in a way that's really consonant with my being a Catholic Christian? So what's the picture? What's the picture I'm talking about? You all know what an equilateral triangle is? You know, think of a pyramid. It's a triangle where all the sides are equal and all the angles are equal. I suppose it really doesn't matter. You could have a different kind of triangle, but that's the one it looks most like a mountain. Remember I talked about one way of looking at our life on earth is that we have to climb the mountain of God. Well, this is a triangle, a pyramid. It's the mountain of God. And what Father Spitzer does is he says, this triangle represents the 4 avenues to or levels of happiness in life. They're the 4 things that can make you happy, and they're listed in kind of a hierarchical order. So you got the picture of the triangle, and it's divided into 4 levels. Obviously, the top one will be a tiny little triangle. The others won't be quite triangles. It doesn't matter. The bottom level, the first level that Father Spitzer talks about, and I think everybody can easily relate to this. He says, one of the major things in life that makes us happy, and it's the first thing in life that makes us happy, is immediate gratification. Think about it. Think about a little baby. A little baby is one tiny, beautiful God-given gift to the world, but it's all need. The baby is all need. And it makes its needs known, usually by crying. If the baby is hungry, it cries. You give it a bottle or breastfeed it or whatever it takes. It's formula. A little later on, it's baby food. After all these years, I still like baby fruit that comes in those little jars. Some people never grow up. Baby pears, I love that. But a baby cries, you give it its food, it's immediately satisfied and gratified, it stops crying. Or maybe it needs a diaper change. Cries, it's uncomfortable. You fix that problem, immediately the baby is okay because the child is immediately gratified and satisfied. And the truth is, we're all like that. It's a big deal in our lives. We all like immediate gratification. Maybe for you it might be a beer, or it might be chocolate. It could be something else. Hopefully, it's also good relationships we have, and all kinds of things immediately gratify us. But one of the characteristics of immediate gratification is it makes you happy for the moment, but after you eat the chocolate or drink the beer, it doesn't take long before you want another one, which is, again, okay. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with this, but you almost want to say it's the animal part of us that needs immediate gratification. We're bodily. We are a species of animal. We're rational animal. We're besouled animals. We're special. We can do things no animals can do. What we have in common with them is that we like to be immediately gratified. If you have a dog or a cat, they meow, they bark, you give them food, they're immediately gratified. One purrs, the other's the tail wags. We're like that, and there's nothing wrong with it, unless as we grow up, as we get older, it's the only thing that makes us happy, or it's the predominant thing that makes us happy. Now, who can you think of who's an adult who maybe a number of other things make them happy, but the predominant thing in their lives that makes them happy is immediate gratification? The addict. The addict. Doesn't matter what the addiction is. As time goes by, it consumes that person, it dominates that person, and the only thing in that person's life that matters. So much so that they can do bad things to other people so that they can be immediately gratified. I knew a family many years ago, wonderful, wonderful Catholic family, and they had to change the locks on their door because their grown son was an addict, and he would break into the house to steal from them. Terrible. All that mattered was that addiction and that immediate gratification. But he got out of the addiction, he became a chef, he got married, has children. It's a happy ending. Doesn't happen all the time. Maybe it doesn't happen most of the time. But what changed was he realized, I can't live for immediate gratification. A sign of maturity is postponing present gratification for the sake of something greater. And he finally got that. So that's the first level of happiness. Nothing wrong with it, but we don't want to get stuck there, and we want to keep a sense of proportion. One of the reasons why we fast during Lent, and we examine our consciences during Lent especially, it's good to do it any time, is to check out, Are there things in my life, if I'm not exactly an addict, am I too drawn to this or that? You know, do I possess it or does it possess me? Who's the master here? You know, one of the things that people get addicted to nowadays is screen time, the internet. And there's a good reason for that, because the folks who are running it want you to be addicted to it. It makes them a lot of money. And we can become slaves of that. Nobody's whipping us, nobody's starving us, but we're being manipulated by algorithms and artificial intelligence. We're being monitored and manipulated so as to consume what somebody else is selling for their profit. I don't want to have you leaving here all paranoid tonight, but what I'm saying is no exaggeration. And for our spiritual health and welfare, we want to be free. Jesus said he came that we might be free, that we might have life to the full, that our joy might be complete. And none of that's possible if we're consumed by a desire for immediate gratification, and it comes to dominate our lives. So that's something to keep in mind. It's something to keep in mind. What's the next level that Father Spitzer talks about? Personal fulfillment. Personal fulfillment. Now, this is very different from immediate gratification, because as far as we know, no animals are involved in that. They're not ambitious. They're not looking to achieve anything great. They don't want the applause of the crowd. They don't want their name up in lights. None of that. It's uniquely human, and it's a huge advance, a sign of true maturity, to want to be personally fulfilled and to achieve things. It's a good thing, and a lot of good comes out of it. A lot of good comes out of that. You get some person who's driven by this, they may not always be the most pleasant person to be around because they're so competitive and driven. Maybe they step on you as they're going on to greater things, but they achieve things that help a lot of people. I suppose in some ways it's not uniquely American virtue, but it's something we pride ourselves on. We are achievers. We put men on the moon. We do things. We're doers. It's a good thing, but it's not the only thing. And there is the downside. People can become consumed with personal achievement, fame, fortune, whatever. And in the process, other people can start to be perceived chiefly as either instruments of their advancement or obstacles to their advancement, and they're treated as such. So, what is it in this striving for personal fulfillment that makes it so dangerous? Well, in a sense, it's the same thing that makes a seeking after immediate gratification so dangerous. It's egocentric. And my brothers and sisters, the great challenge of life is to get the ego out of the center and ultimately to get God in the center. And we are all incorrigibly and almost unconsciously egocentric. I love this example. Happens to me all the time, and I don't think anybody out there is going to say, he's the lowest thing on the face of the earth. I can't believe it. That never happens to me. If you're one of those people who feels that it never happens to you, please tell Father Heller or Father Duffy later, and they will have a statue made of you. And there'll be candles, and it'll be a great, blessing for the parish. We'll make a lot of money on you because you're a saint now. So here's my example. One of the joys of living on Long Island is traffic. A lot of joys. But I'm up kind of towards the North Shore now. I live in Notre Dame and New Park. Way a lot. It could be any road. Down here, it could be Sunrise Highway or Southern State Parkway. I know this area very well. I think I told you I grew up in Oceanside. So it happens to me all the time. I'll be driving along, and somebody will do something really stupid. And it happens more now because people are either smoking pot or whatever they do. I don't know how they get into themselves these days. But they're smoking pot, I can smell it. I've been on the Long Island Expressway doing 70. Somebody passes me by, and I smell pot. And it ain't me. Swear, cross my heart, it ain't me. So, and they're also on their phones. Everyone's on their phones all the time. You could grow old at traffic lights waiting for the person on the phone to finally wake up that the light's green. Driving is no fun. It never was a joy, but now it's crazy. So I'm driving along the expressway, let's say, or Southern State Parkway, and somebody not paying attention cuts in front of me. What's my natural reaction? Hey, moron, where'd you get your license? What's wrong with you? I never give hand signals. I don't even say these things out loud. It's mostly in here. I know, and God knows. That's the problem. So, what's wrong with this person? Or it could be something as simple as somebody's going too slow. Hey, I'm in a rush today. I'm late getting over to St. Agnes. Could we move it up, please? It's all about me. I'm the center of the universe. Now, later that day, I'm driving, and I don't know, maybe I reach over to the radio to change the station or something, or whatever. Maybe I'm just daydreaming. And I annoy somebody. They do give me a hand signal. And I can see what they're saying to me. And it isn't "have a nice day." And what's my reaction to that? Moron, you're so perfect? You've never made a mistake in your life? I'm still the center of the world. I'm always the center of the world. And I judge everything through that lens, through that prism. And I'm just picking on petty little stuff. But most of the stuff we do wrong, thanks be to God, is petty and little, but it's all a manifestation of this egocentricity, which manifests itself in life very often by either obsessive seeking out immediate gratification. It might just be, I want everybody to drive in such a way that makes me happy, and forgive me every time I don't drive the way they think I should. Or it could be a drive for personal fulfillment that leaves, broken bodies, broken hearts, broken lives all over the place. The great, great challenge of life is to get the ego out of the center. And that marks the great transition and the great sign of maturity, spiritual maturity in life. Physically, we're going to keep maturing and at my age deteriorating. Spiritually, there's no guarantee you ever mature. But if you are, there's the potential for there being no end to that, including as your body kind of deteriorates. You can't hear as well, you limp, maybe you need a cane, whatever. You need hip surgery, you took a fall. All of those things are rough, but you can continually mature spiritually. And the key in all of it is to get out of yourself, get the ego out of the middle, the center, and get God there. Get God there. A few years back, there's a New York Times op-ed writer who just retired named David Brooks. Not Catholic. In fact, he was brought up Jewish, but like many of our Jewish brothers and sisters these days, was a secular Jew. He really didn't believe much, but a decent fellow and very successful. And he wrote a wonderful book a couple of years ago. I was fascinated because I read the book and it dovetailed perfectly with all that Father Spitzer says, great minds think alike. And David Brooks's book was called The Second Mountain. Now, Spitzer has one mountain, that triangle, and you've got immediate gratification, you've got personal fulfillment, and then you've got the two upper levels, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. What happened with David Brooks was his life was filled with those first two levels, and he strove after them. He had everything he wanted. He strove for personal fulfillment. He was successful. He was a speechwriter for presidents. He was an op-ed writer for the New York Times. Everything was going great. And then it all fell apart. And the first thing that really made him realize something's wrong, and it may not be out there, it may be in here, was his marriage fell apart. He'd been married a long time. And I've seen this happen, it was like a shock. What did I go wrong? We got money, we got houses, we everything's great. I'm fulfilled. What's the problem? Well, the problem was, obviously, she wasn't. So the marriage is over. He was devastated. And he looked at himself, which is a great virtue and not something everybody does. One of the things you learn about addicts is it's never their fault. It's always somebody else's fault. You ever that. In fact, that's when you can tell there's hope for the addict. On the day he or she says, "I got the problem, and I need help." As long as it's my wife's problem, my boss's problem, the world sucks, it's their problem, they're not getting better. They're not going to get better. They're just going to keep medicating themselves against this terrible world, terrible spouse, terrible boss. David Brooks looked at himself and he said, something's wrong in this picture. And the way he put it was, I had climbed one mountain and I needed to climb the second mountain. And this is really fascinating. What told him or showed him what the second mountain was, and remember, he's Jewish by background. I don't even remember why he did this. He read the Gospel of St. Matthew, and he was stunned by the Sermon on the Mount, chapters 5, 6, and 7. And he said, I'll never be able to unread the Sermon on the Mount. And he calls himself a wandering Jew and a reluctant Christian. He's an honest man. The second mountain was the transition that in Father Spitzer's schema is going from emphasis on personal fulfillment to emphasis on contribution. What can I contribute to my family, my children, my wife, my husband, my family? What can I contribute to the people with whom I work? What can I contribute to making my neighborhood a better place, my community a better place? That's a huge difference. Now we can spoil anything. We got a great capacity for spoiling everything. I could say, I'm going to make my neighborhood better so that when you come to the street corner, it'll say, Charles Fink Road here, Then it's back to personal achievement. And often our motives are mixed. But you've taken a giant step forward, and it's a blessing and a source of great peace and happiness when you get out of yourself enough to be less concerned about me, and rather others, their needs. What can I do to make things better for them? You won't always get thanks for that. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're not living a essentially egocentric life anymore. So to live contributively is that third level of happiness. And notice, as you go up these levels, the happiness becomes less ephemeral, less fragile, more certain, and in a way open-ended. You know, if you're living for personal achievement, and it's, say you're in the stock market and you're doing great and the stock market crashes, or we have a big war or something and everything goes haywire, that could be the end of your personal achievement. Or it could be something like what happened to David Brooks. But if you're mainly concerned with contributing to others, even if you're laying in, I know it's hard, believe me. I never make light of people who are suffering any kind of illness, physical or emotional, because I am the biggest baby you'll ever meet, I happen to be feeling good tonight. If I had a toothache, you wouldn't want to be around me. But that's because I'm pathetic. That's not, what can I tell you? But the truth is, if you're getting everything right, even if you're suffering, even if you're, say, bedridden, you can still contribute to the good of others. First of all, you can pray. And by the way you handle what you're dealing with, you can be inspiring to other people. One of the priests I was blessed to meet when I was first ordained, he's gone home to God. Many of you probably know the name, Father Benedict Rochelle. He was a great, great priest, a wonderful speaker and writer. And he tells the story about, he's a Franciscan. He tells the story of, I forget why he was asked to do this, but he was asked to go visit a woman in an iron lung. I don't think they do that anymore because they've got respirators and all kinds of other stuff to help you breathe. But in the old days, an iron lung was a metal tube that you went into if you couldn't breathe. And the only part of your body that wasn't in the tube was your neck and head. And it would build up pressure, and that would collapse your lungs. And then the pressure would be sucked out, and that would expand your lungs. So this lady lived in that, and that was her life. And Father Gershel said, so I'm on my way to visit this woman. I've been asked to visit her. And he says, I am perspiring because I don't know what to say. And he was a smart guy. He was a priest. He was a psychologist. And he'd been doing this a long time. But this was daunting, unsettling, unnerving. And when he got to the woman, she's in this metal canister, this iron lung, and there was a mirror situated in such a way that she could look at it and she could see who was there to visit her. And he said he hardly was able to say anything to her. She was chatty, she was upbeat, she was so happy to see him. She lifted his spirits. I'm telling you, that ain't me. So I know this doesn't just come naturally. But it's good to see where we should be, what is possible, even in terrible circumstances. And Father Gershel said it came about that whenever he was down or needed a little uplift, he would go visit this woman. That's what he was supposed to do in the first place, lift her spirits. But he would go to visit her because she'd lift his spirits. She was contributing even in those terrible circumstances. And we hear this in the lives of the saints. So you hear about one of my favorite, not contemporary, but recent saints was Saint Edith Stein. Her religious name was Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. She was a convert she grew up pretty Orthodox Jewish, like so many young people, lost her faith, became an atheist, came back to the faith through the influence of a Protestant woman who was a widow, had lost her husband. They had a wonderful marriage. And Edith was so impressed by how well this woman took this terrible loss. She was brokenhearted, but she took it so well and bravely because she was a devout Christian and she believed in the power of the cross and our share in the cross of Christ and all that sort of thing. She so impressed Edith Stein that Edith Stein came back to believe in God and was drawn to Christianity. She walked into a Catholic church one day, really never been in one, big Catholic church like this, and there was only one woman in the church, a little old lady, and she was kneeling and praying. And Edith Stein had never seen anything like that, and she said, this is a brilliant woman, by the way, a doctorate in philosophy and a brilliant theologian, studied under one of the most famous 20th century philosophers, Edmund Husserl. Brilliant, brilliant woman, way ahead of her time in a lot of ways. And she sees this woman, and she could see that this woman was in touch with something or someone, the way she was praying in that church. And that led her to start to read some of the saints, and she wound up reading the biography of St. Teresa autobiography of St. Teresa of Avila. She read it all in one day, which is something because it's a big fat book, through the night. And when she finished it, she closed it and said, that's the truth. She became a Catholic. She became a Carmelite nun. And then she got sent, because of her Jewish background, to Auschwitz with her sister, whom she also led into the convent. But think of all the people who contributed to her, including that broken-hearted woman, I think she was Lutheran, the woman praying in church. They were contributing to the making of a saint without even intending it. And then there was the book, the Teresa of Avila. It shows you the saints still work long after they go home to heaven. What was it the little flower said? After I go to heaven, I'll do even more work than I did here. I will shower you with roses. It was her way of saying God's graces. So Teresa, the reason I bring up Teresa Benedict of the Cross, St. Edith Stein, contributing in the worst of circumstances, all the witnesses to her in Auschwitz, and she wasn't there a long time, but that said that she was like an angel of mercy, comforting the children and the women who, like her, were going to the gas chamber. This wasn't about personal achievement. It wasn't about immediate gratification. It was, what can I do to make it better for these poor souls who are going to be executed? Even terrible circumstances are not an impediment to contributing to the good of others. And that's why that kind of happiness is deeper and more longer lasting than the lower levels. And then there's the final level, no surprise. At the top of the list, at the top of the triangle is God, is God. We are made for God, and our hearts are restless until they rest in Him. And you see the saints giving themselves wholeheartedly to God. And because of that, they give themselves to God's children. Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Could she have done what she did if she didn't so believe in Jesus? So believe that Jesus was in every person she saw. I love her saying that Jesus comes to her each day in his distressing disguise. He comes disguised as a leper or as a poor soul laying in the gutter, filled with wounds that are filled with maggots. You know, we'd be vomiting if we were in that situation. But she saw Jesus. That happiness can't be taken from you. Because in a sense, you know, St. Catherine of Siena said all the way to heaven is heaven. I don't think I've ever had a day when I felt that way, but I know what she was getting at. She was already so in union with God and in love with Him and His children that She was in heaven in a way. Her body just hadn't caught on. So I find that whole schema, that triangle, and the way Father Spitzer talks about it, really helpful and really powerful, and a great, great reminder to me that I constantly have to look at myself and see, where am I here? Is it all about me? Am I rising or falling? And remember, this triangle looks like a mountain. We have to be very realistic about this. What's easier, to go up the mountain or to fall off it? Forget the mountain. What's easier, go up a flight of stairs or come down the flight of stairs? It's always harder to go up. In fact, if you're falling down, it takes no effort at all. You just let go and you fall. Going up requires effort. So all of this requires effort. We're not on our own. We have the guidance and the grace of God to help us, but we always want to be ascending. When Jesus left this earth, that's what he did. He ascended into heaven to say, follow me. What does it say every time we say, when we're at Mass? Lift up your hearts. Not, slide down the mountain. Lift up your hearts. Raise your hearts and minds. That's our goal. That's where we belong. That's what we're made for. Benedict XVI had this wonderful phrase. I've even seen it on young people's sweatshirts. I'd love to see it on everybody's sweatshirt. God has not created us for comfort, but for greatness. It's not against comfort, but we're made for more than that. Babies and animals are made for comfort. Most babies, please God, get it. Most animals in the real world don't. Maybe in your house they do, but not out in the wild. But we're not made just for that. We're made for something more. We're made to contribute, and we're made for union with God, to love God with all our heart and mind and soul and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves, to love each other as Jesus loves us. That's what we're made for, and that's the surest path to happiness in this life. Some years ago, Father Spitzer, whom I've relied on so much, gave a wonderful commencement talk down at a little college in Virginia called Christendom College. And in some way, he summed up writings on happiness in that talk. And it was a great commencement address because it wasn't like any other that I ever heard. Like, I've been to a lot of them. And I graduated college and high school, and you always get these commencement addresses, almost always, whether it's just one of the teachers or a visiting speaker, it's a famous person, doesn't matter. Almost always the pitch is going to be, you've arrived, you've made it, now go out and change the world. You can be anything you want to be. Boy, isn't that setting up for everybody for disappointment? A certain number of young people will achieve great things. Most, probably won't, because most of us are ordinary. We're average, How many Steve Jobs are there who are going to invent, apps for computers and start the Apple company? That's a rare thing. I guess it's good to encourage them, but I thought that what Father Spitzer did was much more helpful and beneficial. What he said was this. He says, I, Father Spitzer, want to tell you, young people, the secret to being happy, no matter what happens in your life, no matter whether you achieve great things or not, and I hope you all will. He says, I want you to do what I do every day. And I need to do it every day. Mind you, this is a Jesuit priest, a really smart guy and a very good guy. He's already legally blind. He probably will lose his sight altogether. And it isn't slowing him down a bit. Again, contributing under fire, you might say, with a great handicap, a great disability. He said, every day I get up, put my feet on the ground, and I say to myself, Spitzer, today, live this life contributively. Don't be thinking primarily of, why did so-and-so get this and I didn't? How can I beat out so-and-so? Why is life so unfair? How come he got praised and I didn't? Today, live life contributively. What can I do to make things better for those with whom I come in contact, those closest to me, and then as the day goes on, anybody with whom I come in contact. Second thing he said was, and doesn't come naturally. I don't know that any of this comes naturally. That's the thing. It comes supernaturally. We need grace. We need God's grace to help us along the way. You know, our default position is not sanctity. Our default position is egocentricity. So it's always going to be the uphill climb. It's always going to take effort. It's always going to be take calling out to God, give me the grace, Lord, to be more like you, to be more like Jesus. So live contributively. Second thing he said, do the best you can to live the day positively. Not Pollyanna-ish, but the day is a gift from God. That's a positive thing. You've been given another day to contribute and to get closer to God. Try to live the day positively. Count your blessings. Be grateful. It's been said that you can't be grateful and unhappy at one and the same time. And the more grateful you are, the more happy you are. You meet an unhappy person, they ain't grateful. You ask them, and aren't there any good things in your life? No, nothing's good. Nobody loves me. Nobody's helping me. Everybody's against me. I'm going to be 80 in a very short time. And as I'm getting older, I'm paying a lot of attention to other old people. And I see them usually going in one of two directions. There's the kind that as they get older, they get crankier and crankier, bitter, cynical. I could use other words, but I don't want to curse, and the bishop may be watching, you know. They're not a lot of fun to be around. Complain, everything's wrong. Yeah, there's a lot wrong with the world. This is new, right? Because until we got here and had to suffer all this, the world was just paradise. Except for World War I, World War II, the Depression, the Reformation, the bubonic plague, no antibiotics. You get a little infection, you're probably going to die. We got it worse than everybody. You'd think so, listening to some people. And it doesn't help that they spend half their life listening to the 24/7 bad news cycle. Knock yourself out. What can you do about any of that? But keep listening. It's making you so happy. I don't want to go in that direction. And by the way, that's my natural inclination. That's who I am. But God holds up a mirror to me. He shows me, you want to be like that? I feel bad for them. I don't want to, say they're low lives and I don't want to be like them. I'm heading in that direction if I don't work at it. That's my default position. Then I see other people, and they don't have perfect lives by any means. They've suffered. They've been around a long time. You know who some of the people who impress me most? You see I saw this on YouTube maybe one time. Lady was like 90-something years old. She was an old Jewish lady with the tattoos from Auschwitz on her wrist. And she was just euphoric, a happy person. Well, probably happy to be alive, but that doesn't always happen. The same. Have you ever noticed the same event can happen to two people, and one, they lose their faith, and one, their faith grows? One gets happier, one gets more miserable. We have choices to make. We look at ourselves. I don't want to go in that direction. What can I do? Maybe I need to spend a little more time in prayer. I'm going to talk tomorrow about the tools we need to navigate this journey rightly and to go up this mountain and find the path to true happiness. Tonight I just want to focus on what that path is. So, be contributive, Spitzer said. Be positive, and even in the negative, try to find what's positive in the negative. And that's usually the case. Even when bad things happen, you say, what is God trying to teach me here? Or what is God asking me here? You know, I'm not a patient person, so I pray all the time for patience. You know what God does? He sends me obnoxious, annoying people. You know, thanks. You know, what's he teaching? What's he asking me in that situation? Get patient, you know? If you ever get patient, maybe I'll send you some nice people. But until then, you need help, and this is the help you need. It'll exercise your moral muscles. So be positive, be grateful, try to find the positive even in the negative. It ain't easy. Who says it's supposed to be easy? And the last thing, most importantly, Spitzer, be contributive, be positive. Model your life on Jesus and his way, not the way of the world. He's your standard. He's your model. He's going to be your heaven, and he's the path. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's the path to the greatest measure of happiness that we can have in this life. It was a great commencement address. You can check it out. Robert Spitzer at Christendom College commencement address. It'll pop up. He gave a shorter talk than I did tonight. Let me close with a beautiful prayer, and then we'll end with benediction tonight. This prayer is by one of my favorite saints, John Henry Newman. Saint John Henry Newman, just recently canonized. And what I love about this prayer is it gives me hope. It fills me with hope. This guy is a canonized saint. Listen to this prayer. My God, you know infinitely better than I how little I love you. I should not love you at all, except for your grace. It is your grace which has opened the eyes of my mind and enabled them to see your glory. It is your grace which has touched my heart and brought upon it the influence of what is so wonderfully beautiful and fair. How can I help loving you, O my God, except by some dreadful perversion which hinders me from looking at you? O my God, whatever is nearer to me than you, things of this earth, things more naturally pleasing to me, will be sure to interrupt the sight of you unless your grace interfere. Keep my eyes, my ears, my heart from any such miserable tyranny. Break my bonds, raise my heart. Keep my whole being fixed on you. Let me never lose sight of you, and while I gaze on you, let my love of you grow more and more each day. Even St. John Henry Newman needed God's help. Being a saint didn't come naturally. It was an uphill climb. We need all the help we can get. And the first thing we need to do is be honest about who we are, where we should be going, and then what we need to do to get there. Once again, God bless you all for being here tonight. We'll close this evening with benediction, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Please pass the word. I hope you all come back, but I hope you bring somebody with you tomorrow. Thanks so much for your attention this evening.
arms of Jesus say, come unto me and rest. Lay down, O weary one, lay down your upon my breast.